Good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning. Sorry about that, you guys. I overslept today. Oh, it's Monday. It's Monday. It's Monday. It's Monday. I hope everybody had a great weekend. I did nothing, absolutely nothing at all. I just laid in bed, diamond painted, watched TV. Did I do anything productive over the weekend? No. I watched How to Train Your Dragon. Because I found out there was going to be a live action one. I did not know that. Oh my gosh. I'm so excited. so and then after I found that out, then I watched the actors from the movie at the theme park at Epic Universe because I've been obsessed. You guys know, like, Universal Studios is my happy place, right? And I've been talking about all the new rides at the new park at Universal. And then, like, see, I was like, why? Okay, I'm getting off on my roller coaster thing now, guys, but you love me. You know how I feel about my coasters. I was thinking, why are they doing How to Train Your Dragon? That's such an old cartoon. I didn't know there was going to be a brand new live action movie. I was like, oh, now it makes sense. So I found where the actors from the live action movie went to the park and got to ride the rides and to see the live action Hiccup actually get to touch. Because, in movies with CGI, like, when they're touching the CGI creatures, they're touching like a tennis ball on a stick, right? So to watch the actor touch a real dragon and almost cry was so cool. He's like, I'm trying not to cry. He's like reaching out and touching Toothless, and he's like, I'm trying not to cry. I'm trying not to cry. It was so cool. So I can't wait to go and touch a dragon. So that was my weekend. I just watched a lot of TV, a lot of YouTube, roller coasters that I want to ride. The girls came over, um, so Travis could fix Kristen's car, and then I talked to the girls about roller coasters and water parks and what our plans are for this summer, basically. What we're gonna do, where we're gonna go. So let's see, who have we got this morning? Judy. Good morning, Judy. Good morning, Jill. I see that Nancy was here, but she's going to her mom, so we will miss you, Nancy. So, yes, Judy, I am currently at 650 subscribers, and I need to get to 1,000 so bad. I just want to get to 1,000 so I can get monetized. That's all I want. Just a little bit of extra money. Just a little bit of extra money. Because I can't afford to go to all these places I want to go to. I just want a little extra spending money. That's all I want. I have so many doctor bills. Although they're not as bad as they used to be because I'm getting better. But I still have them. I still owe. I don't know how much I owe left on my cancer treatment, but I still owe money on my cancer treatment. It's not as bad as it was. It was like 900 and something. It's a lot less now. I don't remember how much I still owe. I think it's like 200 and something. It's nowhere near as bad as it was, but and then all the stuff to my back. But it's a lot better than it was. It was bad at one point. It was really bad. But I need the money. Anyway. Let's see what Judy found for us today. Ronnie Spector. I want to read her book. I really, I do, but I don't. Like, I know there's going to be parts where I'm going to be very mad. Not at her, but at him. Ronnie Spector wrote in her memoir that Spector kept a gold coffin in the basement and told her he would unalive her and put her in it if she ever tried to leave him. He didn't use it for himself as he was cremated and his ashes were scattered at sea. I wonder why. Like, usually people whose ashes are scattered at sea are people that were, like, in the Navy or somebody that really, really loved the ocean, like, had a beach house or was always at the ocean or something like that. Like, I really don't wanna be cremated. I wanna be buried. But I, at one point, had thought, if I were to be cremated, I would want to be this is illegal, but I would want to be sprinkled in the Seven Seas Lagoon at Walt Disney World. But that is very illegal. You are not allowed to do that. Um, I had a friend, well, unfortunately, we lost touch. So I don't know if she's still with us or not. She probably is not. She was a lot older than me. Um, but he did love his Navy grogs, yes. I don't know if that counts or not, though, Jill. I had a friend that wanted to be cremated, and there's a company somewhere, I don't know the name of the company or where it is, but there is a company somewhere that will put your ashes in fireworks, and then you set the fireworks off in celebration of your life, or have them set off. I don't know where it's legal to. I guess the company does all that for you. I don't know. I don't know the specifics, but that's what she wanted to do. But like I said, unfortunately we lost touch with one another. So, but that's kind of cool though when you stop and think about it. So, I don't know. Okay, so today I forgot who this guy was. Stuart James, consultant and forensic scientist Stuart James takes the stand. So it's about an hour and a half. I've got Karen start for. No, it wasn't a jinx. I was reading what you said. Judy, if my family puts me in a box in the ground, it won't end well for them. See, I have a friend that wants to be cremated, and I was like, no. Why don't you want to be buried? And she said, because I don't want to be buried underground. And she said, why don't you want to be cremated? I said, because I don't want to be burned. I don't want to be put on fire. She goes, okay, well, there you go. That's why I don't want to be buried. Um, to me, it doesn't really matter either way. I'm not going to be there anymore. So, um, but Travis wants us to be buried together. So, buried it is. So I've got Karen set to start at 9:30 because this is an hour and a half. But since I was running late and it's already 20, almost 20 after, So I don't know if we'll get through all this or not. What's going on with my voice today? Oh, share your screen, Debbie.
All right.
Stuart James, please. Spell your first and last name.
Yes, my name is Stuart James. My first name is spelled S-E-E-A. My last name is A-M-S. Good morning. At the present time, I am a consulting forensic scientist. I have a specialty in bloodstain pattern analysis.
I'm sorry, what is bloodstain pattern analysis? Let me just interrupt you.
Bloodstain pattern analysis is a study of the size, shape, distribution, and most importantly, location of various types of bloodstains that are distributed during bloodshed events.
Okay, and I'd like to go with the jury a little bit about your background. I got you here today to be a person who does bloodstain pattern analysis for a living. Could you give the jurors a little bit of your educational background and qualifications, please?
Yes, I received a BA degree in chemistry and biology from Hobart College, a small college in upstate New York, in 1962. In 1963, I completed a 12-month internship in medical technology, and I actually practiced clinical laboratory work for several years after I completed that. I completed 9 hours of graduate study in forensic science. This was completed at Elmira College in Elmira, New York. That was my first course in bloodstain pattern analysis, which was actually for graduate credit. Also, I completed a course in forensic microscopy as well as homicide investigation. These courses were all taught by Herbert Leon McDonnell, who is still a practicing bloodstain analyst.
And is he commonly called the father of bloodstain pattern analysis?
Well, I'm not sure what that makes me, but Herbert has been doing bloodstain pattern analysis since 1971, when he wrote a treatise on the subject.
Okay, and your first course.
So the last guy was blood spatter. This guy is blood stain analysis. So those are two different. The word it was there, now it's gone. Two different disciplines. They're not. It takes two different people. Okay.
Course was a course that you actually took from him?
Yes, that was in 1977.
And is that called a basic bloodstain pattern course?
Yes, that's a 40-hour, what is termed a basic course in bloodstain pattern interpretation or analysis, correct?
Good. And can you tell the jurors a little bit about your employment history, if you would?
Yes, as I've already stated, I was a practicing medical technologist for several years.
And what is that? Let me just stop. What is that?
A clinical laboratory analyst. I perform tests on, blood chemistries, blood grouping for transfusions, microbiology, a little histology, and urinalysis, and all the types of tests that one would go either to a hospital or to their personal physician to have samples taken and those tests performed.
And do you have any experience in assisting law enforcement at all?
I'm sorry?
Experience in assisting law enforcement at all in your employment history?
Yes, well, after I completed my medical technology work, I was actually working in a hospital in Binghamton, New York, set up a toxicology laboratory, and we did drug analyses for various police agencies in upstate New York. This laboratory developed through further education of my own from 1977 to 79, the forensic courses that I described, and ultimately I was involved in setting up the first crime laboratory in the Binghamton, New York area, and that laboratory was funded by the Law Enforcement Administration assistance, as well as money supplied by Binghamton General Hospital, where the laboratory was set up, and I supervised that laboratory for approximately 4 years. And we did forensic analysis and crime scene work for approximately 13 counties in upstate New York.
Okay. And in addition to your initial training with Herb McDonald on bloodstain pattern analysis, had you taken other courses in the area of bloodstain pattern analysis?
Yes, I have.
Did you take one in 1983?
Yes, in 1983, Herbert Leon McDonnell, at the request of many of his former students, he set up the first advanced course in bloodstain pattern analysis. And I was a member of that class. There were, I believe, 22 of us. And the reason I mention that is that advanced course was the beginning of our International Association of Bloodstain Pattern Analysts. And I, being at the first course, was given the title of charter member. And that group now is international with approximately 900 members. And we hold annual conferences every year.
And does it publish a journal or a news report or a reporting system on cases? Newsletter of sorts?
Yes. Among our other educational opportunities, we have what is called the IABPA News. That's the initials for International Association of Bloodstain Pattern Analysts, and I have been the editor of that publication. It's a quarterly publication for about the past 3 or 4 years, and I'm still the editor of that publication.
Okay. Prior to taking the 40-hour course with Mr. McDonald in 1983, had you had other courses in death investigation law enforcement?
Yes, I have.
Okay. And did you take some of those at the United States Department of Justice?
Yes, that's one I've taken. And these courses are really anywhere from 1 day to 3 or 4 or 5 days. And I have taken probably 400 to 500 hours of continuing education over the years. And some of the locations have been the New York City Medical Examiner's Office, John Jay College of Criminal Justice, the Henry Lee Institute in West Haven, Connecticut, as well as the continuing educational conferences that are sponsored by the IABPA, and also attending numerous meetings of the American Academy of Forensic Sciences, of which I'm a fellow member.
And in addition to the 400 or 500 hours of continuing education you've taken since 1983, do you actually have formal teaching experience to teach bloodstain pattern analysis to people?
Yes.
Okay. And could you give the jurors a little bit of the benefit of your teaching experience beginning from the year 1972?
Well, in the 1970s, I was teaching first a toxicology course, which ultimately led into another forensic science course at the State University of New York at Binghamton, which is in Binghamton, New York. Well, actually, it's in Vestal, New York. But, sorry?
I didn't hear the city.
Binghamton?
Well, actually, it's in.
Vestal, Vestal. That led into this forensic science course. This was in the School of General Studies and primarily evening courses that I taught there. I also taught death investigation, forensic science at the local community college called Broome Community College, which is also in Binghamton, New York. And subsequent to that, I've had teaching appointments at several police academies, including Broome County, New York, and getting more now into my teaching in bloodstain pattern analysis. I have taught at the Tampa Police Academy. This goes back to about 1988, 89. I have taught in Michigan at the Oakland County Sheriff's Department, and these are 5-day courses. And I've taught many basic courses and many advanced courses, and more recently with a Paul Kish from upstate New York. He and I have taught together now for the last several years, both within the U.S. and abroad, teaching basic and advanced courses in bloodstain analysis. We have taught in, overseas. We've taught in London to the Metropolitan Police, basic and advanced courses. We have taught the same to at the Police Academy in Holland. We have taught at the Center of Forensic Sciences in Toronto, and I have taught with Pat Laturnis, who's with the Royal Canadian Mounted Police in the Ottawa Police College, an advanced course in Perth, Australia, a year ago. So I've had, a lot of teaching experience, mainly with Paul Kish, but also with some others.
And before I ask you the next question, Mr. James, could you just pull the mic a little closer to you?
I'm sorry. That better?
No problem. Thank you very much. About how many hours would you estimate that you have taught over the past 20 years?
How many hours I've taught? I've never really counted it, but I've probably done 15 or more 40-hour courses.
Okay. And some of those have been, in addition to the police departments, have you taught police departments in the United States?
Yes. I have assisted with teaching or taught courses in Elmira, New York with Herb McDonald. He's invited me as a lecturer at some of his courses. I taught with Herb at the Tampa Police Academy. Paul and I have taught in Appleton, Wisconsin, a basic course. And really most recently, Paul Kish and I taught an advanced course in bloodstain pattern analysis in San Diego just this past December.
Okay. And the membership in professional organizations, I believe you mentioned them in passing. They are what, sir?
I'm a fellow in the American Academy of Forensic Sciences and also a charter and also a distinguished member of the International Association of Bloodstain Pattern Analysts.
And have you been certified as a bloodstain pattern analysis by anyone?
Well, Herbert McDonald has taken upon himself to certify several individuals, including myself, based upon his familiarity with our casework and testimony over the years. And Paul Kish and I both are certified by Herbert as competent. And it's just something that I thought that Herb wanted to do, and I take it for what it is. It's not to be construed as a national certification.
Okay. And have you ever given any formal scientific presentations in bloodstain pattern analysis?
Yes, I usually, on the average, I'm asked to present, information on various subjects, mainly bloodstain pattern analysis over the past 10 or 12 years, to various, law enforcement groups, also legal groups involving attorneys' conferences and things like that. And I probably do 2 or 3 a year of those.
Okay. And exclusive of books for the moment, have you authored any scientific publications in any journals?
Yes.
On bloodstain pattern analysis, I apologize.
On bloodstain pattern analysis papers, probably the only one that comes to mind in terms of scientific papers was in the American Journal of Clinical Pathology, was with Dr. William Eckert, and the case dealt with a situation where a husband had tried to dispose of his wife he worked in a funeral home and tried to use the crematorium as a disposal method, and there were bloodstains left over. So my portion of that paper was to write about the bloodstains.
Okay. And before we get into your books, Your Honor, I'd like to have Mr. James's CV marked, if I could, rather than going into all the other areas.
All right, that would be non-upload G or G9.
Thank you, Your Honor. And, sir, after we marked your credentials, which are more fully set forth in your curriculum vitae, have you also authored any books on bloodstain pattern analysis?
Well, I think the correct terminology, in all due credit, is that I've been a co-author in several books, and also have been an editor of two. Being an editor of a book means that you contribute to the book, but you also have contributing authors on various subjects.
And could you tell the jurors the books that you have edited, please?
Well, the books that I've edited, let's see, forensic science book that is used by approximately 100 colleges as a so-called introductory text to forensic sciences, although many students feel it's a little more advanced than that. That is co-edited, actually, with John Norby, who is a forensic scientist from Tacoma, Washington. And there was another book that I co-edited on legal aspects of bloodstain evidence, and that was back, I believe, around 1988.
Right. And have you co-authored books?
Yes.
And what are the names of those books, sir?
Interpretation of bloodstain evidence at crime scenes first appeared in 1988, I believe. That was co-authored with Dr. William Eckert. And the second edition of that book appeared a few years later. I think it was 1998. And that also was co-authored with Dr. William Eckert, with other contributors. And more recently, I believe it was in 2005, we decided to get together Paul Kish and Paulette Sutton. Paulette Sutton, by the way, is another bloodstain analyst, and the three of us co-authored the newest book, which is Principles of Bloodstain Pattern Analysis, Theory and Practice. And I also want to give credit to several contributing authors in that book who wrote chapters, for the publication.
Okay. And we've been holding up this book. This is a copy of it?
Yes, that is a copy of the latest book. That is not the third edition of the first two. It's a brand new book.
Okay. And when you co-authored or when you authored this book called Principles of Bloodstain Pattern Analysis, Theory and Practice, did you discuss blood spatter in gunshot wounds?
Spatter produced by gunshot wounds, yes.
Okay. In that book, sir, did you ever discuss how far blood spatter could go backwards in an intraoral gunshot wound?
No. Intraoral gunshot wounds are not that prevalent, and most texts, in fact, all the texts that I know of, and I'm pretty sure I know 95% of them, do not specifically talk about blood or back spatter, gunshot spatter associated with intraoral gunshot wounds.
Why is that generally?
Well, it may be a matter of how often you see these, and back spatter is usually presented in text and articles in different ranges depending upon the methodology by which they're gaining the data. Some people do it experimental-wise, shooting through bloody sponges. Other people use casework where they have observed it. But intraoral gunshot wounds, and specifically regarding back spatter, there's not really much information out there.
Let me just backtrack one moment, sir. The curriculum vitae that I have, that you gave me this morning, you reviewed that curriculum vitae?
Yes, I'm pretty familiar with it.
It's one that's been marked G9, and was it accurate, up to date?
Yes, it's accurate, and it's up to date as of 06/07, which would have been last month.
Okay, thank you. Now, going back to the book that you authored, do you also teach courses or advanced school courses on intraoral gunshot wounds?
I'm sorry?
You teach advanced courses, on gunshot wounds or back spatter or anything of that sort, not intraoral?
Well, the advanced courses, we try to get, first of all, a basic review of basic theory and principles of bloodstain and pattern analysis, because students taking the advanced course may have taken their basic course years before. So we try to start off with a review of basic materials, and then Paul Kish and myself, we concentrate on fairly specific issues, one being the origin determination with the use of stringing, as well as the trigonometric method, because many students don't get that in their basic courses, or if they have, it's been so long they've forgotten about it. We also concentrate on examination of bloodstained clothing, and also on the case on and the photographic examinations is probably 80% of the laboratory work.
Okay.
There are some other issues depending upon students' interest and what they may want to experiment on, but that's pretty much what we do in the basic courses.
Did you teach a course in San Diego in December 2006?
I did, with Paul Kish.
Did you teach that course with Paul Kish?
Correct.
Co-author. Was Dr. Lynn Harold a student at that course?
Yes, she was.
At that course, did you ever discuss the back spatter of intraoral gunshot wounds?
No,
Okay.
I don't recall doing it. It's not a subject that we would specifically address.
Okay.
I'm sure we talked about back spatter either by case review. Because also, Paul and I show a lot of cases during our advanced courses, and also, which I failed to mention, one of the requirements for a student to participate in an advanced course is that they themselves have to bring a case for presentation to the group and be critiqued by all of us. So that's another portion of that advanced course.
Now, in dealing with what you deal with in terms of bloodstain pattern analysis, your teaching, your writing, your lecturing, and your self-taking casework, could you tell the jurors what you do now? What is your profession right now?
Right now, I am a consulting forensic scientist. I have an office and a residence in Fort Lauderdale, and I do bloodstain pattern analysis. That's my main interest. I work anywhere from 50 to 55 or 60 cases a year as a consultant. I'm hired probably 80 to 85% by defense attorneys and the other 15 or so percentage by prosecutors. I do, lately, most of my prosecution work is done for Palm Beach County through the Sheriff's Office and the State Attorney's Office. And I also, maintain my office and my teaching materials. And so I'm a consultant that actually does teaching, casework, some research when I have time. And I also, the last couple of summers, I've had an intern from the University of Florida who's a pre-med student. So that's pretty much what I do.
Now, are you also a member in an FBI working group or Federal Bureau of Investigation working group concerning bloodstain pattern analysts?
Yes, I am.
Could you tell the jurors what that is?
Yes, it's actually the short name for it is SWGSTAIN. That's SWGSTAIN, and that's kind of an acronym for Scientific Working Group for Bloodstain Pattern Analysis.
And when was that set up?
Well, it was set up about 4 or 5 years ago. What it is, it consists of approximately 30 to 35 individuals who are trained and have experience in bloodstain pattern analysis. The members are drawn from various agencies throughout the U.S., as well as Canada. We have members from UK, members from Holland, and a member from Australia. And they also have, in addition to persons who work for actual agencies, and I mean forensic laboratories, police agencies, et cetera, we have several of us who are private consultants like myself and Paul Kish and Paulette Sutton. So they draw from all areas of working people in bloodstain analysis.
Right. And what is the purpose of swig stain?
The purpose, and it's been talked about for years, even through IABPA, is to try to standardize bloodstain pattern analysis in terms of basic educational requirements, qualifications of instructors, ethical issues, legal issues. A lot of that comes about through admissibility of scientific evidence in court. Fry and Daubert are two areas that, depending on what state you're in, have to be met.
Let me just stop you. The jurors don't know what Fry and Daubert means, so just explain that if you could in layperson's terms.
All right. Well, a Fry standard is a standard that is set in some states in the legal system for the admissibility of scientific evidence. And basically, as I understand it,
Mr. Chairman, I think we can interrupt you. Those are concerning legal issues, correct?
Yeah, the admissibility is the technique or the type of analysis done accepted by the scientific community, basically.
Okay. All right.
And then, of course, the Daubert has a little more complicated with error rates and things of that sort.
Okay, so you're on this group that is trying to establish standards within the blood spatter community. Why is it important to have standards?
Well, because we want everyone speaking the same language. And with that in mind, I'm on the terminology committee, which is one of the tougher ones because there's so many different sources of terminology in terms of defining terms in our particular discipline.
Could you give the jurors an example of one of the terms that has caused some problems in the bloodstain pattern analysis community?
Well, misting is one term that we're really...
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
Misting, M-I-S-T-I-N-G.
Okay.
That entire term, misting, mist-like, it revolves around, how accurately you can measure stains. We're not talking about measuring small droplets in air. You can't do that I know of. But we're talking about the net result of what droplet has made a certain size stain. That's one example.
And why is it a problem, for instance, if one scientist calls something misting and another scientist doesn't?
Well, see, misting in and of itself implies that you're dealing with a gunshot. And misting actually is when it is visible, is ordinarily with the exit wound, because there's a lot more energy associated with exit wounds. Backspatter, Paul Kish and I have discussed this at length. Like, how often have you ever seen misting with backspatter? And I've seen it once. Paul may have seen it once or twice. So is that term really necessary? That's part of the issue that we're having. And another issue about terminology is the low, medium, high velocity, which is what McDonald developed early on. We're getting away from that and getting into more of a taxonomy approach, meaning we have spatter stains, non-spatter stains, because there's so much of an overlap. High velocity based on size alone, millimeter or less, is also overlaps with spatter you see with beatings. It overlaps with spatter you see with people coughing or expirating blood. So these are things that we have to be careful of. So we try to separate spatter from non-spatter, passive stains, pools of blood from spatter stains, and then we try to use case-driven facts to determine if we have impact spatter due to gunshot, if we have expiratory blood, is there blood around the nose and mouth? Can you exclude expiratory blood? Satellite spatter is another
What
issue.
is satellite spatter?
Satellite spatter occurs when even a single drop of blood will fall onto a surface, and depending upon the nature of that surface, may spatter. And the actual parent stain will be very irregular, and you'll see small,
Pattern stain?
sorry?
Did you say actual pattern stain?
Parent, did you use
Parent, I'm sorry.
Parent,
Yeah, just slow me down if I'm going too
And the
fast here.
actual parent
Okay,
stain?
slow down, you're going too fast.
Yeah, sorry. Yes, you'll have a parent stain with small spatters around it, which have not only a horizontal perspective, but also a vertical perspective. And then you also have the issue of blood dripping into blood, rapid bleeding. You can get small droplets of blood that are kind of ricocheting off that main stream of blood, and that's called satellite spatter. The size of satellite spatter can also overlap with gunshot spatter and beating spatter and expiratory blood. So that's the reason we're getting away from this low, medium, high velocity.
Okay. And correct me if I'm wrong, then, in terms of applying a term such as misting, it may imply that a conclusion was formed before an analysis was done. Would that be correct?
Well, perhaps, but I don't think the term is even necessary. Impact spatter due to gunshot is perfectly fitting for every case that I know of.
Okay. Now, you mentioned that you took courses early on, and you also had a book early on that you co-authored with Mr. William Eckert, correct?
Dr. William Eckert, yes.
Dr. William Eckert, I apologize. And there's been, just backtrack, so I mentioned this courtroom about a machine, a paddle that spurts out blood. Could you just tell us about the machine, and then I want to show a couple pictures and ask you to explain it.
Okay. When I took my course from Herbert McDonnell, one of the experiments he actually demonstrated to us, and I don't know why, but he referred to it as the infernal machine. It's almost like the mad scientist has got this device. And what it was essentially was a cardboard box that within the box was attached a motor, and the motor had a paddle blades on it, not too much unlike a propeller. And there was a square cut out of the side of the box right opposite these blades of the propeller. And on the top, there was another hole cut out, which was right above this propeller device. And what he would do would take some human blood into a pipette, and he would start the engine, start the motor, and it would be spinning around like crazy. And he'd drop blood down through the hole onto the paddle blades. And what would happen is that blood would be projected out of the side hole onto this white paper. And it was to demonstrate how far spatters can travel when they're given some horizontal momentum or projection.
Okay. And you use the term momentum. Momentum means what?
Well, it's the energy imparted, to the source of blood, basically.
Your Honor, I'd like to have the next exhibit marked, James, figure 3.13.
Would be H, not upper H.
3.13. And if you could try to enlarge that a little bit. Okay, thank you. Is this a picture out of the book that you co-authored, one of your earlier books on blood spatter?
Yes, that was the 1988 book. You can see we're still using high velocity at that time. And there's nothing wrong with it as long as you appreciate the overlapping of sizes. This shows essentially the first foot or so of that white paper that was laid on the floor in front of the aperture from which the blood was being projected out. And you're seeing extremely small spatter, much less than a millimeter. It's hard to see the ruler, which is a little dark there, but you can, if you look carefully, you can see that for the most part, they're all less than a millimeter in size. Okay. So that was the first part of that paper.
All right. Does that picture accurately demonstrate the distribution and location of the impact blood spatter produced with a little momentum at a distance of 1 foot? With a little bit of momentum at a distance of 1 foot?
Yes.
Okay.
It's not meant to replicate gunshot spatter. It's simply to show how far small droplets of, sub-millimeter droplets of blood can travel.
Does it also reflect distribution and location?
Yes.
Thank you. Your Honor, could we mark the next exhibit, Jennifer 3.14, James, figure 3.14?
Non-apple I.
Okay. Now, is this another picture using the same little machine with momentum that you reflected in the book?
Yes, this is all one series of doing this, and this is at 6 feet away. In the book, I didn't include 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. I just used 1 and 6 foot distances. And the purpose is here to show at 6 feet, you're still getting predominantly millimeter size stains, and some are still less. You can see the millimeter stains are much darker, but you can see, especially just above numbers, millimeters 6 and 7 up there, you can see, or centimeters, I'm sorry, you can see some small stains. Just as a demonstration to show that when you do have, a horizontal projection and force, that even the small droplets can travel, up to that distance. And that was the whole purpose of Herb's demonstration.
Okay, so does this picture accurately reflect some type of distribution and location of both sub-millimeter and millimeter stains at a distance of 6 feet produced with a little momentum?
Yes, and again, it's not intended to show what gunshot spatter will do, but rather simply the horizontal motion with a force.
Okay. With momentum, correct?
Yes.
Is there any agreement that you are aware of in the bloodstain pattern community which says that blood spatter, back spatter, can only go a maximum of 3 feet?
No. As a matter of fact, I researched this extensively in the past, and more so in the last several weeks. I went through every source I could find in my collection. I've talked to numerous people, and there's simply a wide variation, anywhere from 6 to 12 inches, which I think I even mentioned in my second edition, and even maybe in the new book, where you see it frequently. And although we also say up to 4 feet as well. Other sources, including foreign articles, anywhere from there up to 5 to 6 feet. And it depends on, how much can you replicate a gunshot event? You can do experimental exercises with bloody sponges, which is, it's about the best we can handle, at least in our courses. I'm aware of the articles where animals were shot, calves and dogs, etc. But there's no way to duplicate, and you have to go on your case information, and you have to talk to a lot of people. That's what we learn at conferences. We talk about things like that. Well, how far does back spatter go? At my next IBPA conference, I think I'm going to, present a paper on it. Like, where are we with this particular subject, and how precise can we be?
All right. And the experiments that you indicated do they show that momentum can drive various sizes of back spatter longer?
Yes, that's, in addition to showing that the larger droplets travel further, we know that because they have a greater mass, and, the air resistance the air resistance does not affect them as much as it does the smaller ones. We know that. But if you have additional force or pressure, whatever you want to call it, that you can exceed the minimal distances very easily.
Did you ever suggest to anyone in teaching that back spatter from intraoral gunshot wounds, whether they be millimeter or sub-millimeter, are limited to 3 feet or less?
No. In fact, we very rarely talk about that particular distance. We usually, and the best terminology, I think, when you're dealing with a case, and it's even in my report, we say in proximity to or in the vicinity of a gunshot event. And I think that's the best way to approach it without getting too specific, and especially if you have limited information.
Now, you also have published other pictures of the size and location and distribution of back spatter, have you not? in your books?
Yes, we cover the subject. In fact, most bloodstain pattern analysis books do to one extent or the other. Our book that I've done, I say ours, with Paulette Sutton and Paul Kish, Bevel and Gardner in their book spend quite a bit of time on it. Anita Wonder with her book Blood Dynamics, and also Herb McDonald with Bloodstain Patterns Revised, I think, is his, or second revision, is his latest. All these books talk about forward and back spatter.
Now, may I have another exhibit marked, Your Honor? James,
All right.
slide 3.
That will be non-oppo J.
James, slide 3. Does this picture accurately reflect the back spatter at 6 inches in terms of size, location, and distribution?
Yes, for the experimental design. That is a white cardboard that was set up in about 6 inches behind a bloody sponge that was suspended. And there was also a white cardboard 6 inches ahead of the bloody sponge. And at the behind this target, the gun was fired through the back of that cardboard. You can see the hole is kind of beveled outward. And that is the back spatter from the bloody sponge at a distance of 6 inches.
Okay.
And I do not call that misting. Those stains are not, and you'll see with the forward spatter what I'm getting at here.
May I have James, slide 4 up? Your Honor, another marking, please?
Non-oppo K. Actually, before we do that, we'll go ahead and take a recess for 15 minutes. Keep in mind the admonition, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you. We'll be in recess for 15 minutes.
Yes, Your Honor.
Thank you. Court's in session. All right. All parties, jurors, alternates, and the witness are present. Is heretofore. You may resume.
Thank you. Jennifer, could you put K9? I think when we left, you were giving me K9. Okay. Mr. James, when we left, we had just marked for identification K9. Is this a fair representation of what is in your book, or is this a picture from your book, actually?
Yes, it is.
Okay. And is that a fair representation of the distribution and location of back spatter at 12 inches if this experiment?
Yes.
And how was this done?
Well, it was the same experiment, but this target at 12 inches replaced the one that was 6 inches behind and required an additional shot through the bloody sponge to create. So we did 6 inches first and then 12 inches.
Okay. And may we have another marking, Your Honor? I need James, slide 2.
Non-oppo L.
And this is a slide also that you have put together?
Yes.
And what is this, let me just ask you, what does this demonstrate?
Well, this demonstrates simultaneously forward and back spatter. And the reason we can do that is that we laid this cardboard below the bloody sponge, so it picked up the forward and back on the horizontal perspective. So you can see, what's interesting about this image is that you can see the preponderance of the stains and the misting, or we call it rouging also, which is associated with the forward spatter. And you can see the diminished amount of back spatter, and that's generally true, that when you do have forward spatter, it usually exceeds in concentration and amount than compared to back spatter.
Okay.
And there's no misting with that associated back spatter.
Okay. And is that because some of the energy of the forward spatter goes out when traveling with the bullet?
Yes, and it's a higher form of energy too.
Now, is there something called satellite spatter?
Yes.
What is that?
Satellite spatter is spatter which is produced from, for example, a drop of blood falling onto a surface, and when the droplet hits the surface, depending upon the nature of the surface, rougher surfaces will give you more satellite spatter. The droplet hits, and then the surface tension that's holding the droplet together through air is ruptured by the surface, and it creates spining around the edges of the stain, that is little projections, as well as some small droplets that are projected away from what we call the parent stain.
Okay, let me just stop you and interrupt you right there. Did you bring or pull a slide together that demonstrates a vertical perspective of satellite spatter?
Yes.
Your Honor, may I have another marking, James, slide 5?
Non-upper M.
Okay, there's a laser pointer right to your
Yes.
left near your water
Yes.
cup. Could you explain to the jurors exactly what this shows?
Yes, I just talked about a single drop causing satellite spatter, which it certainly happens a lot, but frequently you also have a phenomenon where blood is dripping into blood that's already accumulated, one drop after the other, and the satellite spatter is what you see, which is rebounding away from this parent stain. And of course, the more drops that fall, the larger this parent stain gets, but you have a horizontal perspective going out from the circumference of the parent stain, as well as if you had a target that was situated vertically, many of these droplets that you see on the periphery up here are going to strike that vertical target. So you have two surfaces that are available potentially for satellite spatter to land on. And it's important to recognize, although that diagram is not representative of the size, it's only diagrammatic, that the size range can be within that of some gunshot and beating type events.
In other words, you can get sub-millimeter particles from satellite spatter
Oh, yes, you can.
along with larger particles.
Yes.
Okay. Now, can you also get particles from what is called expirated blood?
Yes.
What is expirated blood in your community?
In our community, our bloodstained community, we refer to small blood droplets that are projected from an injured portion of the airway. And that can be anywhere from a hole in the chest that can get, expirated air coming out from that, or any other portion of the airway, whether it be up into the trachea and also through the nose and the mouth. Injury in those areas will produce blood. And if the person is capable of exhaling, you may see evidence of that in the form of very, very small droplets of blood, which, again, they overlap with size ranges of beating and shooting events. And it's a misconception that these droplets are readily identifiable by air bubbles.
Okay, let me just stop you before we get into that. When you say taking an exhale, can satellite spatter be caused by an agonal breath?
You mean expirated blood?
Expirated blood, I'm sorry. Expirated blood be caused by an agonal breath.
By definition, it requires an exhalation to have occurred.
Okay, and you brought a slide with you to demonstrate what spatter looks like from an expirated breath, correct?
I did.
All right, Your Honor, can we have...
Non-upper M.
Okay. Now, what does this show?
Well, that shows a cotton material. I know that because I made this myself, using my own blood. I put some of my own blood, in my mouth, and I coughed, and I produced these small stains. This was relative to a case I was working on at the time, and you can see the size range is quite small. They're a millimeter or less. And again, this was done to compare to some stains on some clothing on a case I worked a few years ago.
Now, you started telling this jury that it's a misconception that there has to be an air bubble in a spatter caused by an expiration. Could you comment on that, please?
Yes. Well, in our training, teaching, and especially in advanced courses, we actually have either one of the instructors, Paul or I, or we usually get a volunteer from one of our students to actually perform this. And I'm a med tech and I draw blood, and we usually have a med tech in the class anyway, because it's amazing how many forensic scientists started off as medical technologists. I know probably 10 or 12. Anyway, we have them do this, and very rarely do you see air bubbles, and especially on fabric. Well, first of all, on a dried stain, it's impossible to see a bubble,
Why is that?
because if there were a bubble, it then would become a vacuole or just an empty circle. I mean, air bubbles are only seen usually in fresh blood, and it's usually if someone has lung damage and they're frothing blood. Those are true air bubbles. Occasionally you will see them in, if you do X-rated blood and look at it closely right away, you may see a couple. But if you are going to have evidence of X-rated blood, you'll see little vacuoles where bubbles used to be.
Okay. Did you ever teach in your advanced course in San Diego in December 2006 that there has to be an air bubble in expirated blood?
No, in fact, quite the contrary. We taught, and using an example like this, there's no evidence of any vacuoles or air bubbles. That's simply spattered blood, which has been produced, I know because I did it, by expirated blood. And people rely too much upon what they think they should see. And in reality, you don't have that many criteria for expirated blood. Lately, people are starting to look into the enzyme amylase, which is present in saliva, as a chemical test to make a differentiation. But aside from that, if you see mucus strands, that's another criteria, but many times you don't.
Would it be improper in the forensic science community to determine whether there was expirated spatter on a person by the existence or presence or absence of an air bubble?
No.
Could you do that?
No, when you see a vacuole, you may have more indication, but as I'm trying to emphasize, many times you don't have that criteria when in fact it is expirated blood.
Now, let's go on to luminol procedure. Are you familiar with the procedure of luminol?
I am.
And how are you so familiar?
Well, I have been involved using luminol, with some frequency. I don't do it much anymore, but I'm familiar with, there's various solutions that are made up. There's commercial products that are available, and also in my forensic science book, and also the new bloodstain book, there's a chapter devoted to luminol.
What is luminol appropriate for?
Luminol is probably best described as a search technique. And it's kind of like the search of last resort. You get to a crime scene or a death scene, whatever it may be, and you've done all your work otherwise, documenting bloodstains and taking photographs, et cetera. And then there may be some indication that maybe a body was moved or there was movement. There may have been a possible cleanup attempt. That's when luminol comes into play. Footwear impressions. It's very good to track a person's movement, especially on dark surfaces where the actual footwear impression may not be visible without any chemical enhancement. That's essentially what you're doing. You're enhancing those very light, faded stains.
Is it an appropriate or recommended procedure in the bloodstain pattern community to find blood stains, blood spatter or back spatter?
No, I and others do not recommend the use of luminol to look for spatters.
Why is that?
Well, as I believe Mr. Pex alluded to in his article, you can get false positives. The luminol solution can self-luminesce, and I've seen that happen. Sometimes the entire bottle is luminescing as you're spraying it, and so you've got some contamination there. You could also get false negatives depending upon the situation.
Well, let's talk about when you can get false negatives. Are there certain factors that would indicate that a false negative could occur in a case with luminol?
Certain factors?
Yes. Let me rephrase the question. Are certain situations inappropriate to use luminol because you may get a false negative?
Yes.
All right. And what would be some of those situations?
Well, it would be a situation that if you're looking for spatters, that's one reason not to do luminol.
Right.
Because you may get a false positive, or a false negative. And, well, because small spatters of blood can be difficult to see even when they luminesce. The luminol may dilute out the stains, the small stains.
Let's talk about that. What do you mean the luminol can dilute out the small stains?
Well, luminol is an aqueous solution, and blood is somewhat can be dissolved in a aqueous solution. So you may be diluting it out. I mean, you're talking millimeter or sub-millimeter stains.
Okay. And did you see some of the pictures regarding this death scene at 1700 Grandview in Alhambra?
I did.
And did you see some of the pictures of the people walking around on the carpet where the decedent was?
Yes, before the body was moved and then during the moving process of Ms. Clarkson.
Were there certain things there that were contraindicated for then doing a luminol test after that?
Yes, in my opinion, it was not an appropriate series of events prior to that luminol being done.
Tell us why.
Well, because you had multiple people walking over the carpet. Well, they weren't wearing booties, which, of course, if they were, they could have saved them and found if there was any blood they had tracked, from the scene. You're crushing and pulverizing any potential spatter down deep into the fibers, and this is all, contrary to, it lessens your possibility of finding it, and especially depending upon how you look for your luminescence.
Okay. Would you have to soak all the fibers down almost to the floor in order to soak a carpet properly in this situation?
Yeah, if there were pulverized particles, right, you would have to, make sure that the chemical reacted with anywhere those stains may have been.
What is the appropriate procedure for making a determination whether there's blood spatter or back spatter on a carpet, especially one that's got a higher fiber?
Well, I have been involved in several cases where, and proper procedure, in my opinion, when you're looking for spatter, is to make it a priority to collect that portion of carpet. Just cut it right out and take it.
Take it to do what?
Take it to a forensic laboratory and look at it with a stereo microscope, and then possibly seeing something suspicious there, do a phenolphthalein or a KM test, and other tests to prove that it's blood, human blood, etc. Another way to protect a scene, which really hasn't been talked about, I know they do it in UK a lot, which I think is a good idea. They actually have crime scene or scene platforms that are made of metal or plastic, and they have maybe an inch or so of space underneath, and they lay these down on areas that they want to test later, and that's what they walk on. They don't walk on a carpet. They lay down these platforms and use those to protect and save evidence that would possibly otherwise be contaminated.
Okay. And that's to protect spatter, for instance, from being taken out on people's shoes?
Or protect any area, including for trace evidence.
Okay. Assuming that you do luminol at a scene, can you see, or is the recommended procedure standing up and looking to see luminescence to look for blood spatter?
Well, no, I think you're limiting your vision there as far as looking for small areas of luminescence, and especially on the millimeter or less size. There's a better way to approach that if you, in fact, are going to do luminol for blood spatter.
And what is that?
And that would be to, get down close to it with a magnifying device. They're called loops of various magnifications, and that would give you a better perspective, in my opinion.
Have you ever taught in any of your classes that the appropriate procedure for looking for tiny sub-millimeter or millimeter blood stains is to do a luminol test?
No, we don't teach that. Rather, we teach that we don't recommend luminol for making a spatter determination. Rather, for the larger areas of, footwear impressions, as I said before, cleanup attempts, swipes and wipes and things of that sort.
Okay. And are you aware of any ASCLD procedure that makes it a recommendation to look for back spatter in this type of situation through a luminol test?
Not that I'm aware of. My laboratory preceded ASCLD, so we didn't have those types of criteria to deal with. But from my reading of, procedural manuals, the ASCLD only actually determines if your luminol preparation meets the appropriate standard in the spraying device, but they don't say much about the interpretation.
Okay. In other words, the ASCLD procedure determines the material and methodology for
Yeah,
performing.
basically, yeah. Interpretation skills.
You have to let me answer the question first, or else it's just
Sorry.
for material methodology for determining how to apply luminol, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And is material methodology different for whether or not it's an appropriate procedure in a situation?
Yes.
Okay. And is it different from how you look for backspatter or recommendations for looking for backspatter?
Yeah, I don't know of any recommendations looking for backspatter with luminol.
Now, if a luminol test is done, is it important to wait for 48 hours?
Well, this was recommended by Dale Lau, I believe, who wrote the chapter in our bloodstain book.
And
Essentially, the
why
reason,
is that?
Yeah,
Why
the
is
reason
that?
for that is that the luminol reacts with the ferric ion in hemoglobin.
The reason for that is that the luminol reacts with
Red, ferrous and is part of the hemoglobin. Oxidize more, and you get a
Sorry about that, guys.
Courses to students who have taken that before, or a recommendation that you do not use luminol looking for a backspatter because it can give you a false negative?
perhaps not that specifically, but we do talk about the limitations of luminol.
Now, you did review certain pictures and evidence in regard to this specific case, correct?
I did.
Okay. And you and Paul Kish, did you, besides reviewing records, did you actually see some of the evidence?
Yes, we did.
Okay. And was that at the sheriff's lab last May 2006?
Yes, the dates were May 13th, which is a Saturday, and Sunday, May 14th of 2006.
Okay. And did you look at pictures, for instance, of the chair that the decedent was found in?
Yes, the chair was not among the evidence that we were able to see at the laboratory. It was in some other location and wasn't available to us, so we relied upon the photographs that were taken by Dr. Harold.
Okay. And did you look at photographs of the slip that the decedent was wearing at the time she was found?
Yes, and we actually saw the slip as well.
Okay. Now, I'd like to talk a little bit about the slip. Could we have K to the 6 up? And is this a copy of a picture that you saw of the slip? I mean, it'd be turned around, I gather.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, and this is the actual slip you saw, correct?
Yes.
Now,
Does that bother anyone else? It bothers me so much when they call that dress a slip. Slip dress doesn't bother me as much, but they keep calling it a slip. It's not a slip, it's a dress. It might resemble a slip, but it's a dress. She had underwear on under it. They're making it, it almost sounds like they're blaming the victim. Like, you know how they don't, I mean, some people still do it. It's not done as much now as it was in the past. But, you know, like, oh, well, she was asking for it. Look at the way she's dressed. You know, you've heard people say stuff like that when a woman gets raped or whatever. Or essay, you know. Well, look at the way she was dressed. She was asking for it. It almost seems to me like that was her work outfit. She went straight from work to his house. She was a hostess at a restaurant. She was dressed. She was not wearing a slip. She was in a dress. It drives me crazy that they keep calling this dress a slip.
were there important items with regard to the slip that you took note of?
Well, yes.
Okay, and what were those?
Well, first of all, it was not disputed that there was spatters of blood on the slip.
Were you able to see the tape lift that was taken from the top portion of the slip around the breast line?
Yes, and that's why you see a void area there. Some stains were removed by the tape lift.
Okay. And did you see the slip laid out like this when you also looked at it?
Yes, we laid it out in a similar fashion.
Now, there's been some discussion about making a determination of trajectory or directionality based on this slip. I'd like to talk to you about that concept, okay?
Yes.
Okay. Can you make a determination of the location of the decedent's head at the time she was shot? In other words, whether it was to the right, the center, or the left on the basis of the blood spatter on this slip?
No, I would not recommend doing that.
Why is that?
Well, first of all, you have multiple stains, and I recall from earlier testimony that and notes that the arrows indicate direction of travel. You've got multiple directions of travel there. And if you look at the scene photographs, you'll see that with Lana Clarkson in the chair, that her slip that she's wearing, that particular clothing item, is rippled quite a bit. And so that would account for different directionalities, because some of the droplets that came down on the slip when it was rippled, they don't look the same when the slip is actually, spread out. So, and again, some of the stains that were used to determine directionality were fairly large, indicated, they were teardrop shaped with a tail. Those stains may not even have been backspatter.
Okay, let me show you a picture, and we're going to need another marking, Your Honor.
Next one would be O, non-upper O.
Your Honor, we're going to have to go with the Elmo. Apparently, this one won't come up.
All right.
All right, now, you reviewed this picture in the past?
Yes, I did.
Okay. And the large stain that you were speaking of, is that the one in the upper right corner here?
Yes, there was more than one, but that's an example of one.
All right, now, why is it that you can't use a stain such as that to determine directionality of Ms. Clarkson's head at the time the gunshot went off?
Well, that particular stain is quite large, and we know there's some evidence of post-injury activity. That stain looks more the size of a passive drop.
And when you say passive drop, what do you mean by passive drop?
I mean a drop or drops of blood that have been airborne as a result of very little energy, not enough energy to call them spatter.
Okay. So, correct me if I'm wrong, what you're saying is that large stain that shows some directionality is not spatter?
It appears to be too large to be impact spatter. There's no other stains that we have on other objects that are that size. It, in my opinion, is not a spatter. It's a passive stain.
Okay. And
Okay. We're going to stop there. And now we're going to head on over to Karen Reed. And I've got it set to Portals over there. And if you're not going to join us for Karen Reed, I hope you have a wonderful day. And if you are, I will see you over there in a few minutes. Bye.